And we are live. Give me just a second, guys. I'm sorry, I might have a weird connection going on here. So just bear with me, folks, while I please get all of our Facebook supporters in and join up our wonderful Mile High Huddle community. Let the stream breathe and get green check marks across all of our platforms. Mile High Hello, everybody. Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson. Joining me, as per usual, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Now, Erick, very first thing before we get started, today is actually a pretty special occasion for you and I, quite honestly. So today is August 26th, 2022, and on August 26th of 2019, Dove Valley Deep Divers went live. Well, I guess not live. We aired our very first episode on this date 3 years ago. So 3 years, man. It's been a long journey. It's been a lot of fun. I saw your tweet earlier today saying that there's about 50 other people that you could think of you'd rather go through this journey than me, and that just it goes to show where we're at in terms of our friendship and our podcast experience together. But man, I'm glad to be here with you again. I'm glad to call you a friend, to call you my co-host, a person I confide in all the time and everything like that. How are you doing today? And in a not weird way, happy anniversary, dude. Happy birthday.
That's weird. That's just weird.
There, happy birthday. Happy birthday, dude.
And ironically, when I was looking it up, our very first episode was talking about the 53-man roster.
Yes, it was.
So that kind of played into the topic for tonight. I was like, pay a little tribute here. Even though we've been doing our projections for it, I mean, we're focusing more on what battles are left with the final game. And we're going to talk about what these guys need to show in order to walk out with the winner. As for how I'm doing, it's been a really rough week for me. Things are looking up, though. Been up bright and early. My daughter had to have surgery on her mouth, have some dental work done, and they just decided to put her under for it. And we were supposed to be in at 8:15 a.m., and my wife scares the crap out of me to wake me up about a little after 5:30. They're like, oh, we need to go in as soon as possible. Person before ended up canceling, so we went to that 3 hours late, almost 3 hours later. Back home, daughter's doing fine. Went and saw my brother today, who's also been struggling medically. He seems to be doing good. So things are looking up, but it's been a really rough week. And I'm looking forward to unwinding a little bit, even though you like to get my blood boiling sometimes, talking about some Broncos football.
Yeah, well, I can't bag on my boy Michael Ojemudia anymore, although he did play terribly against the Bills before he got hurt. But he's hurt now, so that's not going to necessarily be something we can talk about. Well, I guess we are going to talk a little bit there. But I got Caven trying to break into the room, guys, so just bear with me really fast. But today, like Erick said, we have a great show for everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the tail end of the roster, guys. We're going to update kind of the quarterback battle, some wide receivers that potentially could sneak their way in and everything like that, areas for improvement, and just kind of round out everything for our 53-man roster projection. Erick, I'm going to let you take it away really fast and say hello to everybody in the chat. I'm going to get Caven taken care of really fast. We'll be right back, guys.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining the chat. We have Diamond Rattler sitting in here saying, boom, let's ride. Dylan Von Arx, as always, helping moderate the chat. First No Fear also sitting in the chat asking some questions. We'll try to get to them here in a little bit. No Fear. We have Charlie Fry coming in, talking about the whole thing with the practices and stuff like that. Kevin Gray, Paul, it's great to see you. And of course, hashtag boo Iowa. It's one of the rules that we have here. We got to boo Iowa simply because Nick Kendall. Jay Kozad sitting in the chat. James Campbell as well saying happy birthday, DVDD. Andrew sitting here says, hello all I want to see tomorrow is some physicality on both lines. You and me both, man.
Yeah.
Watching how outclassed the Broncos were on the offensive defensive lines last week. Like, it made things really, really rough. But yeah, I mean, so our topic of conversation today is going to be those guys who are fighting out for the final roster spot. And I think the one that is most prominent, well, I don't want to say most prominent, the one at the most important position, we'll do it that way. The backup quarterback, obviously quarterback being the most important position. No battle for that. But Brett Rypien and Josh Johnson. And this is a battle that is very much going to be determined based off of what they do tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously Brett Rippon is going to be able to get the start. He's been far more consistent in what we've seen from him. Not quite as flashy high highs and low lows and stuff like that. He's been pretty much just right in the middle. And the one thing, and Eric, you and I kind of joked about it when we did your Twitter Spaces the other day following the game. All Brett Rippon does is throw the 9 round. Like he hits the kill routes more off for a guy that doesn't have a big arm. He decides that he's going to throw the deep route a lot, and he's hit like 4 or 5 of them, at least off the top of my head. I know he had 3 of them against Buffalo. I think he had 2 of them to Jalen Virgil, and then a third one that he attempted to Brandon Johnson in that game against Dallas. But with Brett Rippon, he's just been far more consistent. The offense continues to move up and down the field. He finally got some more offense going against the Buffalo Bills later towards the end of that game and whatnot, guiding the ship and whatnot. With Josh Johnson, like when he's hitting and when he is actually playing very well, I think he's a better player than than Brett Rippon is, but he's got to be more consistent because there are times when he is like, especially early in the game when he's not really into a rhythm yet. The first series or 2 that Josh Johnson's out there is not necessarily very good, and I think that the consistency plays into Brett Rippon's favor here.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I really don't want to label it as Brett Rippon's been more consistent this preseason. His game against the Dallas Cowboys, I think, was not as good as many other do. Those 2 big deep shots, obviously making it look a little bit better, and we discussed that last week a good amount. What you do though is, even though with the joke, I mean, he opened up the game a little bit more. Hitting some hooks, some ins, some crossers, things like that, is even if he's hitting the 9 and dump offs, like you're still moving the ball that way. With Josh Johnson, we don't know if he will actually be able to reliably hit the receiver. And on my 53-man roster, and I can pull this up here, I have Brett Rippon as the guy right now. And I didn't add this into the article. Word limits here a little bit played into this. Is it very much determines if he can go out there and do extremely well against the second and third units of the Minnesota Vikings, something that he hasn't had in the last 2 preseason games. I think it makes it an increasing chance that he is the backup quarterback. If he goes out there and struggles, then I think it's Josh Johnson. Like, I don't think that there's any discussion to have. Which is frustrating to me because one thing, and I think I've said this a couple weeks ago or anything like that, is it just seems that Josh Johnson is a little bit more trusted with this coaching staff. And it's just a thing of, all right, you got to go with the better player. So I have Rippon right now, but it's still very much in the air. And I went with Brett Rippon just because I think that with what he has been able to do, it's easier to work with and keep the offense moving if, knock on wood, Russell Wilson does go down.
Yeah, Benjamin Hayward jumping in here saying that he disagrees with you, Eric. Josh Johnson will be the backup come week 1. I tend to agree with Benjamin Hayward here, despite all the nice things I had to say about what Brett Rippon does as far as keeping the offense in rhythm with the passing game and everything like that. I think Josh Johnson's just a little bit better of an athlete, so you can still do some of those quarterback reads, like read option stuff, some bootleg stuff, and get him out on the move more so than you can with Rippon, who's at least a fairly decent athlete. I think that the biggest thing here with Brett Rippon getting this start against the Minnesota Vikings is to kind of showcase him and say, all right, guys, we have a player here, and if you got an injury, there's a player here that's available here. Have a good look at him, and we'll see if maybe the Broncos might be able to get like a conditional 7th round pick or something like that for Brett Rippon. I don't think that they're going to, but I think that that's the more likely scenario than to see if he's actually going to win the backup quarterback job. Now, Eric, I see you got something like burning the tip of your tongue here. What do you got?
Well, I have 2 points here. I think that one of these 2 quarterbacks is going on the practice squad just as that 3rd quarterback, just in case. And who is more likely to clear waivers in your opinion? For me, and obviously this 3rd game is still up in the air. For me, it's it's Josh Johnson. So I think you can be a little bit safer and still stash him. Whereas Brett Rippon, as you said, I mean, if you're willing to trade him for a 7th round pick, a conditional 7th, a team can just wait it out and see if you cut him and just pick him up for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unless they're lower in the pecking order for the waiver wire, which is based off the draft order, like all that. Another thing I have, and I really kind of want to ask you, is it's a would you rather question that I know would frustrate a few people in chat. So with the skill sets, and I'm not saying they're as good as these two players by any means of it, would you rather have Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater as your backup quarterback? Because that's how I look at this battle. Josh Johnson is equatable to Drew Lock, whereas Brett Rippon is equatable to Teddy Bridgewater. And for me is, honestly, if you're losing your quarterback, who can you trust the more should be the guy. And for me, again, that's Brett Rippon. But moving on here, moving to the wide receiver position, this one was tough for me. Again, I couldn't fully go into all of all that I wanted to within the topic because of the word the word count. And David says Josh won't go on waivers. He's a free agent if released vested vet. Yes, sorry, I was just talking about it. As Josh Johnson would be a free agent. He just gets outright released because he's a vested vet. He's still eligible for the practice squad.
Yeah.
But it was tough for me because for two reasons. One, I really wanted to keep 7 wide receivers, but I got down to 54 players, and it was who's going to be that last guy cut, the 7th wide receiver or a couple other players that we're going to be talking about here shortly. And for me, it went with I ended up going with the receiver, and that receiver was Tyree Cleveland. And reason why he was above Jalen Virgil or Seth Williams was, quite frankly, because of what Dwayne Stukes just talked about with him on special teams, that he's a guy he wants out there on special teams. He is an integral part of the special teams unit. And it just was like, I really wanted that on there, but I think that you can get by with having him on the practice squad, especially if he's still might be out 1 to 2 weeks. You can still go that route with it. And Brandon Johnson over Jalen Virgil and Seth Williams, that just comes down to the pecking order. While I wasn't there at practice, multiple reports made it very clear that after the top 3-4 guys, Brandon Johnson was the next one up. He was getting out there before Seth Williams. He was getting out there before Jalen Virgil. And we're seeing that in games as well. So in that aspect, that 5th receiver spot, I went with Brandon Johnson.
So I have not really a would you rather, but more like an alternate scenario here based on what we know with what Dwayne Stukes said also about Tyree Cleveland and him being that guy that's a core special teams player, talking very highly about Aaron Patrick as well as a core special teams player. To me, what would you think about, and this is kind of just roster math mostly, but I want to explain the scenario out. Brandon Johnson getting released, getting waived, because I would imagine he's probably going to clear waivers. Tyree Cleveland making the initial opening 53-man roster, and then them putting him on short-term IR to begin the season with that throat injury, then bringing Brandon Johnson back to the roster. Is that a potential possibility here?
It's always a possibility with it, especially with the injured reserve designated returnability, and it only being 4 games, like that also helps. It just seems like that Cleveland is at that point where, because in order to do it, you have to make the initial roster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that thing of like, okay, he may not be ready for week 1, but he may be for week 2. Do you want to add 2 more games on top of that?
Right.
And so that was a debate I actually had with myself, was short-term IR. Was that an option here? Would Brandon Johnson clear waivers? And honestly, I'm not sure. I've been watching all the other preseason games, and there's a lot of teams that need a lot of help at wide receiver. And typically it's a pretty easy position to find some at least decent depth options there. There's a lot of teams that need help. There's been a lot of bad looking receivers out there, and digging into, I also had a thing about cuts from every other team. Digging into that, there's a lot of receivers that are a lot of these projections that I was looking at and reading from multiple sites for every single team, and they're all talking about, we need help at receiver. We need help at receiver. We need help at receiver. Brandon Johnson has shown pretty well to where I think that he could potentially get picked up on waivers. I do think your option would be more possible if George Payton decided we're going to dangle him on the trade market, see if we can't get a positive return because he was an undrafted free agent.
Right.
and then we're going to turn to Jalen Virgil or Seth Williams.
That's the very first. The very first name is the one that I was hoping you were going to say first, Jalen Virgil, because I think that he brings something to this team that none of these other receivers, aside from Montreal Washington, brings. And even in that aspect, it's still not the same. Montreal Washington, straight line burner speed like that. Obviously, KJ Hamler is there, but you don't know what he's going to bring. Jalen Virgil is incredibly fast. That guy just gets up and flies. He's a long strider, gets up to top speed quickly, and he's 6'2", 210. Like he's a bigger bodied receiver that can actually be a legitimate true deep threat. Brandon Johnson's more possession receiver. The 6'2", I think he's 215, 6'3", 215, something like that. He was the first one that I thought would be a great replacement for the Tim Patrick role. But I think that while I think you said it correctly. Brandon Johnson, I mean, look at with the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are in dire needs of receiver help. They got to get a good firsthand look at Brandon Johnson, and if they feel like they need to go and upgrade that room as much as I think they do, then that makes a lot of sense. Seth Williams makes a lot of sense there as well if he gets waived to be a guy that the Cowboys go and pick up. So lots of different ways that this wide receiver room could shake out. I think that Tyree Cleveland is eventually going to be put on the injured reserve, the short-term IR. I do think that that's the route that they go just to make sure that they continue to be able to keep him, because I think he might be a fairly decent commodity if he gets waived. Might be a guy that gets kind of
on what though? Like that's the thing with Cleveland is he hasn't shown anything because hasn't been able to play in the games.
Right.
And last year's preseason wasn't exactly great.
Right.
And being injured. Like our team's going to take a shot on that throat. They don't have the full medical information there. Like, I don't know. But Phil McLaughlin comes in and says, "Good evening, Lance, Eric, and Scott." Unfortunately, Scott's not with us tonight. Says prayers for your family, Eric. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it says, "Happy birthday, guys. # let's ride."
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, let's ride. Let's get down to it, and excited for the Broncos. And it was funny, completely unrelated to this. I'm one of those people that I have to sleep with sound on. So I watch a lot of YouTube channels and stuff like that. And there's an ad that every time I hear it, I instantly wake up because it's "Let's Ride" and it's for eBay Motors. And I just always laugh about that. Benjamin Flores says, "What's up? Go Broncos." Peter Middleton says, "Love the would you rather questions." We do too. We especially love them during the draft of would you rather take this player here or this player there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know Gary Leeds Palmer came in with a couple comments in here. Gary, I can't seem to find your comment. Here it is. He says, "Good afternoon, Lance, Eric, and Scott. What's up, Broncos country? Go Broncos. Let's ride." Yes, Gary, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you always jumping in with us. You are one of the guys who consistently, and Ernie Mays as well, saying hello, Lance, Eric, go Broncos.
What's up, Ernie?
Hold
on. With that really fast, we've got that's grabbing stars comments and stuff off of Facebook, or at least the ones we think are stars comment. We got to give a huge shout out to EJ, who on YouTube came after the show was over with an amazingly generous super chat donation to us. And EJ, hopefully you're listening again today. We really appreciate that, man. Like your support really means a lot to us. So thank you again. A special shout out to EJ over on YouTube with that.
Yeah, EJ, we definitely appreciate that. I mean, it was when we got the message from Chad about it, like I think both of our response was what the, and we can't say the last word of that, but
yeah,
like we were shocked.
Yeah.
Paul joining us saying thank you, Lance. And Paul, from now on, I'm going to need you to go #boo Iowa on every comment, just because it just makes my heart happy to see that. He says, "I'm pro Virgil." I am too. I'd love to see Virgil make it because way back when they signed it, Jalen Virgil was like, that's the guy, that's the undrafted free agent. I have to pick the roster. Huge fan of his college game. So
let's do a quick transition here. Speaking of undrafted free agents and guys that are on the tail end of this roster and stuff like that, the interior defensive line. I see you have Matt Henningsen making this roster. And you have been a huge fan of what Matt Henningsen has been able to bring, especially in a role that he wasn't necessarily slated to be, at least from my opinion, and I think from yours as well. I think we're kind of in lockstep on this. Playing that zero technique and one technique nose tackle, where he has been absolutely fantastic going up against second and third string interior offensive linemen. So I guess my question is here, and let's take this back to the Jalen Virgil conversation here really fast. Does Jalen Virgil bring enough with his special teams prowess, his ability to take the top off the field, potentially slide into that KJ Hamler role a little bit?
I know where you're going with this.
to get rid of Matt Henningsen? That's the question I'm going. Okay.
And the simple reason for this is because did you not see the defensive line depth last week? Henningsen, quite frankly, Matt Henningsen has looked much better than Uwazurike has.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not cutting Uwazurike as a high 4th round pick. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I don't think it's a situation, to be fair, I don't think it's a situation of does Virgil bring more, which I'd argue he doesn't. Not as the 7th wide receiver that would probably mostly be a game day inactive, barring injury. It's a thing of you have a 4th round pick here, and then you have a guy who's looked better than that 4th round pick. I doubt they cut one of them. It would take a veteran, I think, bringing in like a surprise cut from somewhere or something for them to part ways with Matt Henningsen. That's just my opinion on it. And I think Uwazurike is safe to make the roster. And I think Mike Purcell, I mean, I think it's at the point we need to have this conversation real quick. Obviously, I've been cutting Mike Purcell, age, cost, all that stuff like that. I don't think it happens. And on top of that, I think that it's very clear he's making the roster because he hasn't played in the preseason. And on top of that, we have seen Deshaun Williams play in the preseason, and they're adamant they're resting their starters. Yeah. Does that say to you DJ Jones, Purcell Jones as their starting defensive line?
Yeah, if they're going to run if they're going to run that base package where they need that nose tackle up front. And quite honestly, I've been very intrigued with the way that this defensive line rotation has been kind of playing out for the most part, honestly, because what I've noticed is they're doing a lot of line shifting. So they're running with Henningsen at the nose. They'll bring in Uwazurike, play him as a 3-tech defensive end, and then have an edge player like an Aaron Patrick all on one side of the offensive line, essentially attacking the left side of the offensive line. But they'll leave the A gap and the B gap wide open, actually they'll probably, I think it's a 4-eye is what they're doing with the backside edge defender defensive lineman. But they leave that A gap wide open to really have a running lane for the linebacker or safety lined up back behind them. So to me, like if you're going to go Jones and Purcell and have that 0 2-eye 5 technique or whatever the alignment is on that, I really do like that because you're adding a lot of beef to that defensive line on one side of the football, and then you're allowing a guy like a Jonas Griffith who moves so quickly, a guy like Josie Jewell who does so well reading the running game and filling gaps and attacking the hole. I think that's a really good combination, and Mike Purcell being able to stand up as that nose tackle, man, I think that I like that a lot. Although I still think that with the cost there, the limited role that's going to potentially play out for him, I would rather move on from Purcell and see if Henningsen can't be that guy to step up there.
But we know that Henningsen can't be. And I'll get back to that real quick. I just want to grab this comment from Phil. It says, go Nebraska. Nick will love that comment. Phil, I'm a little disappointed. We're talking about Uwazurike, the Iowa State guy. Yeah. I would say that really gets Nick's blood boiling.
Yes, it does.
You tease him about that all the time.
I gotta say this every time we get a comment about Nebraska. Yes, Iowa's terrible. Like we don't like Iowa, at least not on this show. Every time we get this show, okay, guys, I'm in Wyoming. Everybody should know this by now. I'm in central Wyoming where the wind blows west to east. Okay, you know why the wind blows west to east in Wyoming and it blows really hard? Because Nebraska sucks. Okay, like Nebraska's awful. We hate Nebraska here in Wyoming. So I have to put that joke out there all the time. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry, man.
And then David says, Virgil for Purcell versus Purcell for a roster. I pick Virgil. That's the thing. It's not Virgil versus Purcell. No. Like, there's no doubt about that. I think that Purcell sitting makes it quite clear that he is like a top, I don't want to say 22. I'd say he's probably like one of the top 25 to 30 guys on this roster right now, because that seems to be where they're resting players the most. Anyways, going back to that, we know Henningsen can't handle that role because Purcell is a 2-gapper and a 1.5 gapper that relies on the power. He can hold up against double teams and he can shoot the gap pretty well against the run. We've seen Henningsen consistently fail. This is one of the reasons why I didn't like him as a 0-1 technique is he can't hold up to the double team. And that is such an integral part of what you need from your nose tackle, from your 0-1 technique.
Yeah.
Like
fair.
DJ Jones can do decently, because your whole job as that is to eat up those blocks, eat up space, so the linebackers can crash through and make the play. So I don't think it's a case of playing Henningsen there. As good as he's looked, it has been consistently working as shooting a single gap, as a one gap 0-1 technique to shoot the gap, similarly to what we saw out of Wade Phillips with the one in the Dallas Cowboys with that one defensive lineman that had Spears Spencer. Last name started with an S. It was a while ago, I'm pretty sure. Or it was a while ago. I'm pretty sure his last name started with an S. That doesn't seem to be what Evero wants to do. He likes those bigger guys in the middle. I can see DJ Jones rotating there. Purcell's definitely going to see some usage there because they want to get DJ Jones moving around. They don't want him only as a 0-1 technique.
Right.
Now, going back to this with the conversation with Virgil,
yes,
Aaron Patrick versus Virgil versus Tyree Cleveland. This is part of the conversation. And it comes down to, as it says, special teams, Aaron Patrick. George Payton's praised him. Dwayne Stukes has praised him. Like, he's been consistently praised for special teams play. And his game against the Bills, while others are really hating on it, like, the dude did his job. Like, his run defense is where people are trashing him. But it's a simple thing of understanding his run fills and his run fits, and he did that. He did have some issues getting off blocks, and as a pass rusher too. And I don't want to say that's fine, but he's your sixth edge rusher. Like, he's there for special teams. And he does a really good job at it. And it's a simple thing of what he brings on special teams more, what your bottom of your depth chart guys got to bring. He brings far more than Jalen Virgil does. Jalen Virgil's not a gunner. He's not a guy to run down the field and hit the punter or anything like that. Tyree Cleveland is, but he's got the throat injury. Jalen Virgil's a returner. And we have that. We have Montreal Washington. And their safety net punt returner is Kendall Hinton. Like, we've seen that. That's pretty well established. And you can keep your backup returner, even though he offers up great speed on offense, he's not going to see the field on offense, barring injuries. So you can stash that on. You should be able to anyway. Stash that on special team or on the practice squad.
So scroll up really fast. I'm missing a name here. I have you with you said 6. Yeah, Benito Browning, Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory. That's 5. Who's
and
this?
Aaron Patrick?
Oh, Malik Reed. I'm missing Malik Reed. That's the name I'm missing here. That's another interesting conversation. So with Aaron Patrick having that special teams role as Malik Reed, who's on a restricted free agent tender, that's what, 2.4 million or something like that. We've said it so many damn times I can never remember. Is Malik Reed potentially a guy that the Broncos could move on from to save a little bit of roster, some cap space, open up another roster spot for one of these wide receivers to come in? Because you and I were talking about this coming into the show. Malik Reed doesn't play special teams. He's played 100 snaps total on special teams over the last 2 seasons combined, and most of those are on punt coverage. Like, that's it. He's not a kickoff coverage guy. He plays sparingly on field goal block, but it's like punt coverage, and that's it. So is Malik Reed potentially a guy where we could see some of that excess weight being trimmed off of this roster?
I mean, Malik Reed is one that I've pretty consistently talked about as he's an option to be traded. I think a wide receiver has a potential to be traded. I would be surprised, more surprised if Denver didn't trade one of their surplus wide receivers. I would be surprised if they didn't. Malik Reed, it seems like that if they don't get a really good deal for him, or a deal they feel is really good for him, that they'll keep him simply because we saw Baron Browning struggle against the Bills, and Malik Reed has that experience, and he's looked pretty good this preseason. So I could see them keeping him unless they get that really good deal. Peter Middleton says Reed for a 4th. I think a 4th and probably something else would probably be what it would need to be in order for Denver to move on from him. But he's a guy he's one of those options that he could potentially be traded. Couple comments here that I want to grab to real quick, but I just want to talk about the punter battle. I have Corliss Whitman simply because of the cost. Not seeing Sam Martin against the Bills kind of clouded it a little bit. It's like the quarterback position. Tomorrow's game is going to be vital. Corliss Whitman is very much more of a roller coaster, has the highs, has more lows. Sam Martin's been a little bit more consistent. If Waitman can be pretty consistent and outperform Martin against the Vikings, then I think it increases his chances. And my reasoning is simply the fact that Corliss Waitman has to be $1.4 million worth less or worse than Sam Martin, and I don't think he has been, even with his inconsistencies, but we'll see more with that coming on. Now, getting to these couple comments real quick. Albert Knoppers, you think they keep Hinton and they are not trading him? He's one of the receivers I could potentially see them dangling. Hinton, Virgil, Johnson, and Williams, I think, are all options for it. And then James Campbell says, always difficult when a player who the team hopes they can stash on the practice squad gets picked up by another team. But if they get picked up by another team to be on the active, be happy for them. Yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever somebody gets picked up that you're hoping gets stashed lines elsewhere, you root for them. But I think that one thing, too, is that teams picking up players off of waivers isn't really as common as we make it out to be, especially quarterbacks.
So glad.
On average, of like the few hundred people that get cut, on average, maybe 10 get picked up on waivers. That's about average, and that's been about the average for the last 10 to 15 years. Yeah. It just doesn't happen that often, just simply because they're being cut for a reason, and teams really like to stick with their guys they've been working with for the practice squad. Am curious to see, though, is how much that's going to change going forward with the expanded practice squad and the ability to add veterans to it. So maybe we see a change with that this year, but I'm rather curious about that, because then you can protect your guy or add this guy onto it and add a little bit of insurance for it with the veteran on the practice squad.
I'm so glad.
Left foot kicker.
Yeah. Sorry, not trying to step over the top of you here. And Waitman, yes, is a left-footed kicker. And shout out to Albert Knoppers, by the way, who's working really hard on some cool stuff. He's got a car that he's turned into the Bronco mobile. He's sharing it on his Facebook page. If you haven't checked that out, Eric, you definitely need to. He's doing a lot of damn good work over there, and got some mailboxes coming for us and everything that he's done. So shout out to Albert Knoppers, who's big friend of the show here. I'm so glad, Eric. I want to go back to your last point really fast about the players getting picked up off of waivers and stuff like that at the beginning of the season. You said something that makes absolutely the most sense, and is probably the most accurate thing that you've said in a long time, actually. I'm just playing. But teams like to keep the guys that they've had in camp. They know the system. They've been around. They've been a part of this locker room. They already have the cohesion and the camaraderie of being a part of this roster. And that's not just the Broncos. That's every single team across the NFL. Why go out unless it's like a very blatantly obvious improvement for your team? Like, we're going to come into this here. We'll actually move into this. Like a fourth offensive tackle. You got a team out there that has an offensive tackle that gets waived, and you're trying to move on from a guy like Cameron Fleming, who has been hit and miss and really bad, and the Broncos need another offensive tackle to fill out the depth of the offensive line. That is like really the only way you're going to see that. You bring up a really good point here, though, with the veterans that are allowed to go on the practice squad, with the expanded practice squad going up to 16 guys. It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, but do you have any names specifically of guys? Because I know you were looking at this a couple weeks ago. Any names of guys that could potentially be waived that could be an improvement over Cam Fleming? Because based on his play that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, not hard to improve on that.
Well, I mean, you guys can check out my 53-man roster projection. It also has the practice squad on there too. And you guys can read all my analysis on that and my opinions on it at milehighhuddle.com. And up there as well, I also have one from a player from 30 of 31 teams on offense and defense for each team as who the Denvers can look at, who the Broncos could look at to upgrade the roster. A bunch of tackles. There are a bunch of tackles. That is how bad the depth has looked. That is how bad Fleming has looked. And a lot of them were like, okay, maybe this guy's not really an upgrade over Fleming, but I like the tools he has to work with, and he's younger and cheaper. Matt Pert of the Giants, I love his length. Yes. Technique has been an issue for him. He's one guy I highlighted. Jordan Mills is a veteran who the 49ers aren't sure if they're going to keep. He's a guy that I have. I have the fourth offensive tackle simply because of Turner with his knee. And that is one reason for that, why I have it. I thought about 3 tackles, but it just came back to his Turner has that knee issue. Like, he's just now getting back to practicing. I haven't projected as starter, but it's still a concern. And if he goes down, you need another tackle until at least Tom Compton's able to possibly come back. So that was something that went into it. But yeah, I mean, you just got to find there's options out there, and it really depends on how the scouting department, who they found, and who gets cut. Because sometimes it's like, we like this guy in the draft. We wanted him as an undrafted free agent. We thought he's looked good in the preseason. Now he's available. Let's go get him, see what he can do for us. Yep. And Clifton Harris comes in with a good point about wide receiver. Broncos for life. Sutton's injury history. Hamler only 85% healthy. Virgil is a roster lock. Sutton's injury history isn't a concern.
Not anymore.
He was fine last year. I mean, it took a little bit of time for him to get back, and he looks better than ever. Obviously, freak injuries can happen at any time, so knock on wood that it doesn't happen. It's just enough time before that I'm not concerned about that. Hamler only 85% healthy. Yeah, he is, and he's got an injury and pretty extensive injury history, being missing games every single year so far. That is concerning. It's just a matter of, you have Montreal Washington, who they're trying to get to work as in that same kind of role that Hamler is, and Jalen Virgil. Let's be honest here a little bit. One thing that factors in for NFL teams is the caliber they were going against. When was Jalen Virgil making plays? Fourth stringers. He was making plays against fourth stringers.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter of preseason game 1 and the third and fourth quarter of preseason game 2.
It's that factors into it, and it's a thing of we didn't see him get more increased reps. Maybe we will against the Vikings, which is why that it's still a possibility he makes a roster. I just wouldn't say he's a roster lock. Simply for that fact that I don't want to say he's the last guy on the depth chart, but he's near the bottom. And it's not because he's been bad. It's just because everyone else has looked pretty good as well. Albert says, thanks for all you guys do. Keep up the excellent work. Thank you, Albert. We appreciate that. Are you going to be at the meet and greet this year, Albert? If so, I'll see you there. Albert doesn't have Cam Fleming on his 53-man roster. That's definitely true. And Albert says 85% Hamler is better than 100% toxic Antonio Brown. That is definitely true.
That's definitely true.
Without getting more into the conversation there and leading me down the rabbit hole of mental health and everything like that. Jake goes that I was just getting ready to do this. But with Compton, he has to miss at least 6 weeks, right? That's what it is for PUP?
I think it's 6 weeks. I do believe it's the first 6 weeks. I know IR designated to return as the first 4. I believe going on PUP, because he was on PUP at the start, and they put him on the reserved list the other day. So I think that he's out for the first at least 6 weeks. He can come back after 4 and start practicing. And then if he doesn't come off of the PUP list after week 6, I believe he gets reverted to IR automatically. So the rules changed again this last offseason. So it's difficult to really understand all of it. I need to go back and really kind of focus on that. But there's a great question by Jay Kozad here.
I'm trying to remember what it is. So the rule is because of the rule changes. Players placed on the PUP list prior to the season would miss at least 6 games, and many would linger for another 2 to 3 weeks before activation. Mm-hmm. So they have to miss at least 6 games, and then, of course, with that.
Right.
However, PUP list this season, now players are eligible to practice after just 4 games, with no set minimum number of practices to get back into the lineup. So now it's 4 games. Okay, so there was the change there.
I want to go.
And Chase Wellner, Compton can come back week 5. I read. Yeah.
So I want to go back to what Cliff Harris was saying here with the Sutton injury history. Hamler only 85% healthy, and Virgil is a roster lock. I don't think it's necessarily Virgil's the roster lock with KJ Hamler having his injury history there. I think Brandon Johnson's the guy. Quite honestly, I know we talked about him potentially being as a trade bait piece, but with Jerry Jeudy and his ability to run out of the slot, and that's where he does a lot of his best work off the line of scrimmage, moving around as a gadget piece and stuff like that. I think that Brandon Johnson being that other boundary receiver is more likely to be the roster lock there than Jalen Virgil. And I know that sucks because I like what Virgil is bringing as a deep threat and also as a backup kick returner. I think there's some versatility there, but as Eric said, he's going up against 2s and 3s and 4s, not 2s and 3s or even the 1s like Brandon Johnson's been doing since Tyree Cleveland went down. Like Tyree Cleveland
Yeah.
was the first man up there. And then when Tyree Cleveland went down, Brandon Johnson was the next guy. And he's taken advantage of that role and really stepped up to task and has been a player that's making it hard for these Broncos to make a finalized decision on their wide receiver depth. I want to transition a little bit here to the other side of the football.
Quick, I wanted to
go ahead.
Since you grabbed that, I just want to say this. Clifton, I mean, if he makes it, man, feel free to come back, join us next week and rub it in our face. You can laugh at us, go, ha, 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 you were wrong.
Yeah, please do.
And I'll be happy to be wrong. Like, as I said before, I mean, Virgil was the guy that when they announced their undrafted free agents, he's like, that's the guy that I think can make the roster. Granted, I thought it'd be as a returner because I doubted Montreal Washington, which was foolish of me. He seems, I don't want to say the real deal, but he seems more than competent enough to be the returner in the NFL. Obviously, he's still a rookie. Obviously, we haven't seen him in a real game setting going against, actual special teams members because a lot of play in the preseason, they just don't play their normal special teams players. But so we'll see how it is. But he seems to have that locked up.
Yeah. Albert Knopper's jumping in saying Michelle and I will be at the meet and greet, and now I'm jealous because you guys were so fun to hang out with the last time that we were there, and I'm going to be unable to go. I've got plans a couple weeks after that. I got to save some money up, so that is unfortunate. But he has a question in here. Hernia is what Tom Compton has. Should be about 6 weeks. No, it's a back injury. He's been dealing with a lingering back injury since I believe the OTAs. Like early OTAs, I think I maybe go back before the draft. Like he had another procedure done right at the onset of training camp. So they're really playing it careful with Tom Compton and that back injury that he has. So 6 weeks would probably be most likely. So especially obviously being on the pup, he has to miss those first 6 weeks. So that would probably be the area that we're looking at for him to make a return. I want to go to the opposite side of the football here. And I know it's kind of a hard transition here, hard pivot, but we were talking about receivers. Let's go to the guys that cover those guys really fast. And the Broncos coming into training camp, I thought that there was some fairly decent depth pieces, but they got dealt another big blow in terms of the defensive players that are going to play key roles on this defense when Michael Ojemudia went down against the Buffalo Bills with a dislocated elbow. It sounds like he's out 4 to 6 weeks. So his time frame for return as of the point of the injury is anywhere from week 2 to week 4, so long as and it doesn't sound like there's any surgery or anything like that. It's just this pretty standard dislocation. So hopefully he comes back sooner rather than later. But behind Michael Ojemudia, this cornerback depth has been very hit and miss, aside from Damari Mathis, rookie 4th-round pick out of Pittsburgh, who's flashed pretty consistently. Like it seems like the Broncos got a fairly good player in Damari Mathis, but that's still now cornerback 4 on this roster. And Faion Hicks has been really hit and miss. Bless Austin has been hit and miss. Sang Bassey can't figure out how to cover a crossing route to save his life, and he just looks slow out there. They just got – I think they still have Donnie Lewis right now is a player that they still have, and he's been probably the worst of the bunch out there.
Played like less than 10 snaps against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he wasn't cut for that reason. Mm-hmm. But, I mean – Ojemudia's injury does make a little bit of sense.
We were talking about areas for improvement based on what the roster looks like as far as Erick has his 53-man roster projection at milehighhuddle.com. Cornerback, especially in today's NFL, especially with what we know about George Payton going back to his time with the Miami Dolphins, also the Minnesota Vikings under Rick Spielman, and now with the Denver Broncos and his first overall draft pick and going and getting Pat Surtain. He said it himself. It's harder to find franchise cornerbacks than it is to find franchise quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson. Is corner a big concern to you? Like as big of a concern as it is to me? Because with Ojemudia down, I'm not really keen on keeping a guy like a Faion Hicks on this roster. I know you have him on the practice squad, but spoiler alert, by the way, but like corner is definitely an area the Broncos need to go out and find somebody to come in and play because Austin Lewis and Faion Hicks have been not very good, and neither has been Sang Bassey.
So it seems like Mike Kliss had his 53-man roster projection published, I believe, late last night or early this morning. I took a quick glance through it, and what stood out to me was there was a couple positions that he mentioned, like, oh, yeah, this is a position George Payton could look out at waiver wire and pick somebody up. Corner was one where he basically made it clear, like, this is a position where George Payton will pick somebody up off of waivers, is kind of how it read to me a little bit. And that stood out because they definitely need help. And I do got to, let's hear self-own a comment I said last week. After the game when I was on with Chad for the gut reaction, I talked about Damari Mathis on that touchdown to Gabe Davis, and no, like I was completely wrong there. Being able to see it at a different angle in the All-22, that is not Damari Mathis's fault. He played that just about as well as he could. I want to know what the heck Caden Stearns and Asang Basi were doing, because one of them plays their coverage like it's a cover 4, the other one plays it like it's a cover 3. Like they just both seemed completely lost. Well, at least one of them was lost. Like depending on what it was, the one played their thing right. That was just tough. Would be hard for Mathis to defend against. So Mathis played that as well as he could, and he had a really good game after that. Yeah. So cell phone my take there. Like I made a mistake, but I was wrong.
Yeah, you're good, because I was wrong on that as well. I thought that there was safety help over the top when there really wasn't, not on that side of the field. And when you look at the play and you go back and watch the entire thing, Damari Mathis is lined up with Gabriel Davis on the boundary, and he runs a post route and just continues to run it across the front of the end zone. Where Mathis started in coverage and where that play ended was like 60 yards worth of running you had to do to try to keep up with Gabriel Davis. Now, granted, you should be able to do that. You should be able to keep up. But he got lost in trail thinking that he had help over the top. Caden Stearns bit on the crossing route, and there was no safety help over the top anymore, because was that PJ Locke, I believe, stayed to his side and actually came across with the crossing route. There's like 3 players that attacked that same crossing route.
No, PJ Locke was playing, I believe he was playing high on what would be the side that Mathis started off.
Yeah, the defense's left side.
Yeah, the defensive left side. He seemed to be playing a high zone there, which makes me think that Stearns was incorrect, that he should have had the other one high. Obviously it's hard. Maybe there was a situation where Locke was incorrect and he was supposed to be more of a single high. I don't fully know. It was definitely just a weird play by the defense. One that I reached out to a couple people and asked, hey, can you help me figure out what is wrong here? What is going on? Because I can't. And self-admittedly, figuring out what coverage teams are running is one of the areas I struggle with.
Can be.
And watching the amount of mistakes that were on this was just like, I don't even know where to go. But anyways, going back to the initial question here about upgrading and everything, and with what Kliss said about basically they will pick somebody up at cornerback off the waiver wire. Michael Ojemudia. Okay, so he's expected to be missed between weeks 3, be back somewhere between week 3 and week 5. Or week 4. He is one that short-term IR makes a lot of sense for, just to give him that little bit extra time. And what I look at is, where are they at? 50%. So 2 games. Is it possible that they're more than that? Is it possible they're less than that? That's what I look at for short-term IR. If they're going to be less than that, then I'm not putting them on there.
Right.
If they're going to be more than that, then obviously. So Ojemudia being right on the thing. So it makes sense because, hey, he has to make the roster initially. Waiver wires pickups happen the next day. There you go. That's your spot being opened up for that corner you pick up off of the waiver wires instead of having to cut somebody else. So I definitely think that is possibly the likely route they take. And then depending on where it goes from there, Ojemudia probably comes back on the roster. I fully expect him to finish the season out with it, unless we get close to the trade deadline and some team is like, yeah, we really want him, and they give a pretty good deal for it.
Yeah. We got some stars coming in here really fast from Phil McLaughlin coming in. And thank you, Phil, for joining us. Guys, is there going to be a show after the game tomorrow night? And Lance, don't make fun of my alma mater, LOL. He's a Nebraska guy. Gotcha. Okay. It's not necessarily just the school. It's the entire state sucks. No, I'm just playing. I'm playing.
Yeah, there'll always be a post game gut reaction. For basically every single game. The only one I'm not sure about this year is the week 3 matchup, the Sunday Night Football game against the 49ers. I'm not sure on that one, just simply because of being a night game and the meet and greet being that same week.
I volunteer to tribute.
Yeah, you got to hit Chad up on that one. But tomorrow night, Chad will probably be on it. Don't know for sure. Maybe Zach. I know that last week Zach had some personal stuff. But yeah, there'll be an after show of it. If it's too late for Chad afterward, because to be polite here, he's a little bit older than us. But no, he might need to hit the bed a little early, because that. And I mean, the game starts at 7:00 their time. Here I am in Alaska. It starts at 5 p.m. I'll be wide awake for it. So, anyways, there will be somebody on for a gut reaction after tomorrow's game.
Hopefully,
who it is, we don't know yet.
Hopefully,
and then Albert comes in with some praise, saying, "This is what I like about my Huddle podcast. You all are not afraid to admit to being wrong. You are great examples of doing so for the community. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
I especially appreciate that because I often get told by people that I will never admit when I'm wrong. So appreciate that, Albert. I always try to, own my mistakes and correct myself if I say something incorrect. Peter Middleton says, the cornerback and right tackle.
Wait. I want to go back to this. You actually admit that you're wrong? Albert, how did you do this? How did you manage to
only on the podcast?
Seriously, you should see our direct messages back and forth with each other, our text messages and stuff, because I will put out a take and he'll nope, you're wrong. And then I'm right. I have good takes and good opinions. He's like, nope, you're still wrong. You suck.
Mayock and John Gruden would like a word.
They're doing a great job destroying the Raiders franchise. Okay, come on. you have to stop twisting my words. You have to stop it.
No, there is no twisting with that. You flat out said they're doing a great job turning the Raiders organization around.
Well,
they're looking to cut Alex Leatherwood, as they just cut Kenyon Drake,
as Cleveland Farrell's on his way out. No,
Jacobs, Josh Jacobs, maybe.
What I said was definitely. Albert's like, do you guys need a mediator? Yes. Damn it.
I'm the mediator. I'm the judge, jury, and mediator. I won't say executioner in this one. Mm-hmm. Between Lance and I, and Nick and Carl, they get thrown in here too. And James. James can attest to
that. Still 3 years, and you can't admit that you're damn wrong, man. It's worse than being married. I swear to God.
I just admitted I was wrong. What are you talking about, man? Anyways, Malcolm says hello from a rainy Homer, Alaska. It's been the weather here has been terrible. I am so sick of the rain.
You don't know nothing, man. We actually finally got our first rain. You can set it all down here, but we actually got rain today for about an hour. And I got off work early today, was taking a nap with Caven, and lightning went off and literally shook the windows in our house with the thunder. So I'll take all the rain, but you can keep all the lightning. How about that?
You can have it. I'm convinced it's been raining in Alaska for 137 years straight with how it's been. We haven't had a real nice sunny day in a few weeks. And it's rough. Especially homeschooling Rosie. Going off topic from the Broncos here for a second. Don't worry, we'll bring it back full circle. Part of the thing is we have to do PE. We have to take her outside. We ain't taking her outside when it's pouring rain. So it's been a bit rough. Anyways, Kaylin comes in and says, yo. Albert says Ojimudi is on the hot seat as well. I don't know. This is the third time I've seen Turpin. I don't know who that is. I don't know what that is. So it didn't make sense for the Broncos to get Turpin. Broncos drafted Washington with designs of him being the returner and got Virgil at the very least to push. Not only that, they brought in Trey Quinn, who was a safe guy to push for it. Caden Davis was also brought in to push for it. But whoever this Turpin guy is, who is it?
I'm not sure. I think there's a corner named Turpin, but I don't know this. Peter coming in here. And maybe, Eric, this might be a good time to jump on a Twitter Spaces or something like that Tuesday afternoon, because we have the waiver wire that's going to be dropped. Everybody is going to be cutting their rosters down to the 53-man roster limit going into this season. Peter jumping in with a great question saying, what are your waiver wire pickup positions, Eric and Lance? For me, we already mentioned both of them. I think it's going to be an offensive tackle. I think that there's going to be a cornerback picked up as well. The Broncos, I guess not necessarily under George Payton, because this is only year 2 under him. But John Elway's last year, they went out and they got a wide receiver and kick returner, and Deontay Spencer made the roster for 2 years in a row. And so don't think that it's not going to happen. I think it's rare that it's going to happen, but I think this year specifically, tackle, a cornerback are probably going to be the guys added. And then the Broncos have already addressed the linebacker position, at least until Jonas Griffith comes back. And Jeremiah Gemmel from, where was he at last year? Was he a 49er? I think he was a 49er last season.
Jeremiah Gemmel?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was at UNC last year.
Is he undrafted free agent? I thought that he was with the team earlier.
I don't know.
I don't remember. But they went out and added a linebacker to add to the practice squad at least, Jeremiah Gemmel. But I do think that corner and tackle are the two ways that they go in the waiver wire pickups. Eric, what do you think on that?
I'm trying to figure out for sure what Jeremiah Gemmel. We've hit that point where the draft years are starting to blend in together.
Yes.
So this class, like I'm getting it mixed up with 2021. Like I've hit that point. I'm trying to find an answer here, and I can't find an answer for it. Anyways, for what positions? I think cornerback is a must. I think cornerback will happen. I think they'll keep an eye out for offensive tackle as well, and maybe a linebacker. I'm not expecting much out of Jeremiah Gemmel, like to be honest. Like I'm just not expecting anything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This late of edition. So Gemmel was an undrafted rookie from this year's draft that initially was with the 49ers.
I was going to say, I knew I had the 49ers right, and Peter Middleton came in and said, yes, the 49ers. What about one last question here really fast. What about the guard conversation right now with the Broncos?
What guard conversation?
Well, just with Tom Compton putting on the PUP list, the reserve injured list here. You've got Netani Moody, who's been okay, at least from everything we've talked about in practice. Dalton Reiser, Graham Glasgow, Quinn Miners. There's kind of an influx of some players. Could the Broncos potentially be moving on from a guard in order to bring in some draft capital for this upcoming NFL draft class? Because George Payton, we all know he loves to have his draft picks. So, and he only has what, 4 or 5? 5. I think it's 5 picks this upcoming season. He wants to get closer to 10. So is a guard potentially on the move out of Denver?
Serious answer is, I mean, it's a possibility. Moving on from Glenn Glasgow is a possibility. I think at this point, Dalton Reisner is safe. And they've consistently has been pretty consistently, proposed as a trade bait. But I think at this point, he's safe. Netani Moody's an option, but the knee injury kind of mucks things up.
Yeah.
Graham Glasgow, I have a hard time seeing him traded because of what he brings as a depth player. Like, he can step in and start and be at the very least solid. And it's not easy to replace that necessarily, especially with how the offensive lines in general look across the NFL. And then my less serious answer is go watch the Bills game and even the Cowboys game. Look at how the depth guards looked, and then tell me to trade one of them. Like, there's no way to trade.
Albert Knoppers comes in with a great point here, and I think this is probably going to wrap us up here. We're pushing that hour. But he says, I think Dalton Reisner will be like his rookie year. This scheme is so much better for him. I 100% am in on this take. If I was Joe Marino and this was Takes on Takes from the Draft Network, the approval Maraca is out right now. Full all in on this take, because back in Dalton Reisner's rookie season, what did they do? They ran a lot of outside zone, a lot more of that kind of stuff, outside zone, inside zone, than the power and gap stuff that they did with Pat Shermer these last couple of seasons. This is a perfect scheme fit for Dalton Reisner, and it shows. Everything that I've been told from people that have been at practice, the multiple reports out there, Dalton Reisner actually looks like the Dalton Reisner of a couple of seasons ago when he was a rookie. And I am very excited about him at the left guard playing next to Garrett Bowles, because those two work really well together in that with their athleticism, their lateral mobility, getting guys out in space and moving some stuff around. I think that this is going to be a great year for Dalton Reisner, and it's going to get him paid. It's going to get him paid a lot of money, and hopefully it's in Denver for the next 4 seasons, because he is in a contract year this year. So I think this is going to be huge for him. Huge, absolutely huge. I'm so in on this take.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for Reisner. Unfortunately, I think that he will have at the very least, a better year than the last 2 years, and price him out of returning to Denver, which means that just next year we're going to be looking for another left guard.
The one counterpoint I have on that is he is from Colorado. He grew up a Broncos fan. Maybe this might be the one guy that you're talking about, like a Derek Wolfe, who does take that hometown discount to stay here in Denver in a scheme that fits what he wants to do. And he loves this city. He loves this organization. He loves the fan base here. While I don't disagree with you, he could potentially price himself out. This is a guy that would probably stay in Denver for a couple $1 million a year less, just because he loves being a Denver Bronco.
Counterpoint, you know how rare hometown discounts are?
Yeah, but I still love
it. Happens in like less than 5% of contracts.
I know.
Like,
I know.
But to that point, Reisner does have a love for this city. He does have a love for the area. So if there is somebody that would think, yeah, he could possibly do it, he is one of them. Mm-hmm. They're just very rare to actually happen. Yep. So it's a possibility. The issue also becomes is who else Denver has to pay. A certain quarterback being one of them.
Yeah.
So
yep.
It's definitely an option.
Last one. Go ahead. Finish up.
Real quick, I wanted to say on this too is like, if Reisner does struggle, I wouldn't be surprised if they dangle him just before the trade deadline and be like, all right, we're just going to turn to Moody. Like, recap some of that draft capital a little bit.
There you go.
They won't get, a second round pick, not a third. They'll probably get a late day 3 pick, but it's an extra pick, an extra dart for Peyton to throw. And typically he cares about darts, but this year he just said F them darts.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Michael Ronquillo at the buzzer jumping in here saying, good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Let's ride and go Broncos. One more thing here really fast. Happy #Orange Friday, Broncos country. Let's ride. Go Broncos. And Michael, better late than never, buddy. It's always good to see your bright and shining face here on Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. As with everybody else here tonight, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate all of your guys' love and support. You guys can find us on Twitter. Keep yourself in the conversation, guys. Please, by following me at Sanderson MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel, and also, guys, on the DVDD_pod account. That's our podcast account, obviously, where we're going to talk about everything we have coming up Friday. I'll throw some takes out there every now and again, not very often, but you could at least give us a follow on that. It helps us out a lot in terms of growing our reach and stuff like that. While you're at it, guys, also at Mile High Huddle, please, guys, go and check that out. Follow at Mile High Huddle, because that's some other account where you guys get breaking news and analysis, everything regarding your Denver Broncos, including film breakdowns, opinion articles, anything to do with the Huddle Up Podcast Network. You guys can also follow at Huddle Up Pod. Great way to keep up with what's going on every single episode of the Huddle Up Podcast Network. You'll find it at Mile High Huddle. Facebook users, make sure you guys go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. That's the podcast account there. Get into the conversation with those guys as well, especially people who are on Twitter. Go on Facebook, go and talk with those guys. Expand this community that we love and appreciate so much. Guys, if you're financially able to do so, aside from stars, donations, and super chats, a great way to support the show is huddleuppod.com. Guys, that's the merch tent, which I got to talk to Chad about. We don't have any DVD stuff on there anymore, so we got to figure that out. But you guys can get a hat. There's T-shirts. There's coffee cups, face masks, a onesie for your baby, something for like a little dog scarf thing that you can get on there. Something for the guys, something for the gals, anything to suit your fancy. It's a great way to help support the show, grow our brand a little bit, and obviously get more Broncos fans into this conversation. And guys, if you're financially unable to do so, obviously times are tough. Inflation's just incredible right now, but there's 3 things everybody should be doing, at least by this point. I've said it every single week for, it's been 3 years, actually. Exactly today, 3 years. Subscribe. Wherever you guys get your podcasts, subscribe to Mile High Huddle on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker. Does not matter. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle across all social media platforms. Helps us out a bunch. If you like anything, every article you guys see, every video you guys see, please click the like button. We've got 26 like and react emojis on this show right now. Get that up to about 50 if we can possibly do that. It'd be really great. And if you love it, please share it, guys. Get it in front of as many Broncos fans as possible, because without your guys' support, we couldn't do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos, our Denver Broncos. #Let's ride. Erick, any big expectations for this game tomorrow night against the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, starters are not going to play. We've already known that. KJ Hamler is expected to play. There's an article up milehighhuddle.com for that. Go check out that latest information. Any big expectations for you? What are you mostly watching outside of the stuff we talked about tonight?
I mean, at this point, I'm mostly watching for how those battles play out. Why I wanted to talk about that, because right now, those are the roster spots that I think are up for grabs. Before we get out of here, I do have a few final things. Orange colored glasses. Cortland and Tim took hometown discounts in retrospect. They didn't really take hometown discounts. Sutton was still unsure with the injury aspect of it. Tim Patrick, at that point with where he was at in his career. What has happened, though, is that the wide receiver market has since blown up. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really a hometown discount. Not really.
Right. Well, I think that's what he's saying in retrospect. Like, just because of the situation and circumstances, when they signed those deals, they were cheap deals regardless. But
that's the thing. Like with Garrett Bowles, did he take a hometown discount in retrospect after seeing what the tackle market did? No. Like, unfortunately, that's just not how it really goes. The second thing is make sure you tell your family you love them, guys. Like, this week I thought I about lost my brother, and I was rather worried about that, and I don't tell them that enough. So make sure you guys do that, because you just don't know what's going to happen or when they're gone or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm always here with you on that. And as several people have said, I'm here with you as well. Prayers up for Erick and his family and everything. If you want to know more, go to his Twitter account. You can see kind of what he had going on with his daughter and her teeth and everything, surgeries. Like I said, I've done it before, but I'm not going to necessarily do it again. Just like Erick said, keep your eye out on your family. Say that, tell your loved ones you love them, and that how much you appreciate them all the time, because you don't know. I mean, life is fleeting and things happen. I mean, life is why that saying is, life happens. But get off the melancholy stuff. Predictions: Broncos win 70-0. I do want to see KJ Hamler, though. I'm very excited to see KJ Hamler come back in game action off that torn ACL. We saw that like Erick and I were there live when that happened in the Jets game last year. I'm excited to see him, to see him get hit a couple of times, maybe take a deep shot, just because, like, just to throw him out there and get that long, deep shot. Let him open up his speed a little bit and see what he can actually do. I think this is a big confidence-boosting game for KJ Hamler as one of the few starters that's going to really play a key role players. I think Alberto Cuebanam is going to play a lot as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm watching out for the most part. I want to see how Damari Mathis kind of bounces back a little bit after last week getting picked on and bullied just a little bit against the Bills. But for the most part, yeah, I think we pretty much hit everything. Erick, what's up?
Over under. How many snaps does KJ Hamler play? Setting it at 5.
I'm going to go over because I'm going to say it's closer to 10.
I'll say 5.5, or as it said it as 5.5.
Yeah, I'll say closer to 10. I think they're going to get him in the first series, and I'm hoping that that's going to be a fairly decent drive. And I do, like I said, I do hope they take the top off with him one time and get him out there. But I do think he's going to play at least the full first series, which, like I said, 5's about right, but 7 to 10, I think would be the way that I say it.
I'm with you. 1 series, 3 plays. All right, it's going to be a run, a short pass to somebody else, and then what is Brett Rippon going to do? He's going to hit that 9 route to KJ Hamler.
There you go. He's calling a shot right now. I'm about it, though.
No, I brought that whole up just for the joke. But
yeah, I'm about it, though. Love it. Bringing us full circle, because Rip hits the 9 again. I wrote that 5 times. I've written that 5 times. Rip hits the 9 again. Every time
he's got to change it. He's got to change his number.
He does. He needs to talk to Kendall Hinton. I need that 9er, dude. Let's go. All righty, guys. Again, thank you all. We got to get out of here. We will talk to you guys same time, same place next week. Thank you all for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You all stay safe and take care. We'll see you guys later.